Hey guys, welcome to this Methods 1-2 chapter help video. This is going to be on chapter 1D, which is constructing simultaneous linear equations. So this is like a kind of like a hybrid between chapter 1B and 1C, where 1B was constructing linear equations, 1C was just simultaneous linear equations, like an introduction to it. Now we're mixing it both, so we're constructing simultaneous linear equations, and this chapter, like most of the questions, it's very similar to 1C, and you should be able to pick it up pretty easily. But yeah, we're just going to go through this like chapter pretty quickly. This video should be a little bit shorter than usual. And yeah, I've got two questions that I've made up, so let's go through them. So question number one, the sum of two numbers is 18. If the product is 72, what are the two numbers? Okay, now this is interesting. So it asks the sum of, or it tells us the sum of two numbers is 18. So what we're going to do whenever we like have simultaneous linear equations, if it says two numbers, sometimes that can mean the same number, but most of the time it's going to be two different numbers. So in this case, what we need to do, it also gives us the sum of two numbers. What we do is x plus y. The plus comes from where it says the sum of two numbers, and then the two numbers, that means x and y. Because it's two different numbers, we need to assign two different variables. And also don't forget equals 18 at the end. Now the next part of the question, if the product is 72, so it gives us more information now. Now we know what we're working with. What are the numbers? This first part here, if the product is 72, so when the two numbers are multiplied together, the answer will be 72. That's what it's trying to say. So this becomes x times y equals 72. And that's how two linear equations, simultaneous linear equations. So they refer to like the same numbers, so we can use them both to kind of like rearrange one of them to make it so that we can solve for the second one. And something like that. We're going to call this equation number one and this one equation number two. So with the first one, we just rearrange it so that x equals something, just like what we've done in chapter 1b and 1c and like 1a even, and so on and so on. So that becomes x equals 18 minus y. Now what we do is we sub in this second one into the first one here. So that becomes y bracket 18 minus y equals 72. And now what we do is 18y minus y squared equals 72. And what you're going to realize is, what do we do here? We've got like a y squared, and this is kind of funny. We haven't really seen this before yet. And this is where we're kind of like working ahead of ourselves. So what I mean is that this is actually a quadratic. And we're going to learn about quadratics later down in Methods 1-2. You might have learned, may have learned it in year 10 or something before that. But maybe you haven't, and this will be like something new. But if you have, it's going to be like a quick refresher. And yeah, you're going to learn it later down the line anyway. So yeah, let's solve for this. So we're going to bring this 18y minus y squared to the other side. So that becomes y squared minus 18y plus 72. And that's going to equal 0. And what we do is we factorize this. So y, that's minus 12, and then y minus 6 equals 0. Okay? So now if you understand it, like if you recall everything from quadratics, you're going to realize that, oh, here's the null factor law, and y equals 12 or 6. And yeah, so this is like kind of new territory. We haven't learned quadratics before, but this is pretty much how we get to our answer. So y could mean both 12 or 6. Now what we do is we substitute these two numbers into the original like question here. So with y equals 12 or 6, let's substitute y equals 12 into the first equation. So that becomes x plus 12 equals 18. And the answer would be x equals 6, because you're just rearranging the 12 over to the other side. But in this other like circumstance where y equals 6, that means x plus 6 equals 18. And in this case, x equals 12. What you're going to realize is that these two numbers, like x could mean either one of these two numbers, but y could also mean the same two numbers. So what we found here is that 12 and 6, they must be like the exact numbers of what the question is asking for us to like find. So our answer is therefore going to be 6 and 12. And when we double check the answer, like what the question is saying, the sum of the two numbers is 18. Well, 12 plus 6, that equals 18. And then if the product is 72, so let's check if the product is 72. We multiply 6 times like 12, and that equals 72. So yeah, those are going to be our two numbers for question number 1. Okay, our second question is going to be a shop sells keyboards for 80 bucks and then mice for 50 bucks. If all the keyboards and mice sell out and like they're out of stock, the shop receives $12,000. So the customers pay $12,000. The shop receives $8,000 after selling 3/4 of the like total number of keyboards and half amount of the like mice. How many of each were sold? So in this like last part here, where they receive 8,000, how many of each were sold? So, okay, let's analyze the question. Let's find the information we need to create our linear equations. This is what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that the 80 bucks is going to be the coefficient of our variables. So, keyboards for 80 bucks. So 80 times x. X means keyboards, and then 80 means the price of the keyboards. Mice for 50 bucks, so that's going to be 50y. The reason why we have plus is because the keyboards plus the amount of mice, that will equate to whatever we have here, which is going to be $12,000. Because the question is asking if all the keyboards and mice sell out, then they receive $12,000. So this is going to equal 12,000. And that's going to be our first equation. So now we look at the second part of the question. The shop receives $8,000 after selling 3/4 of the total number of keyboards and half the mice. So this is going to mean 8,000 equals, it says 3/4 of the keyboards. So that's going to mean 3/4 times 80x. So you can imagine that if all the keyboards were sold, that's going to equal 1. But in this case, 3/4 of the total number of keyboards in stock were sold, so that's going to be 3/4 like in front of 80x. And we do the same with the mice part. So after selling half the mice, which will mean 1/2 of 50y. And that's going to be our second equation, simultaneous equation. And what we do now is, well, we can simplify this second equation so that we don't have to deal with 3/4, 80, and half 50. So this simply just goes to 8,000 equals 60x plus 25y. And yeah, that just means like the same thing, the second equation. What we do now, and you can see here, we've got two equations. And you're going to kind of realize that, oh, they're simultaneous equations. We got two methods on how we can solve this. Okay, with the previous one, we use substitution method, and this one here, we're going to use elimination method this time, just like how we did in chapter 1C. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to multiply this second linear equation here by 2, because that gives us 50y, and you're going to realize in this first equation, this has 50y as well. So this will become 16,000 equals 120x plus 50y. So that's still the second linear simultaneous equation. We just multiplied everything by 2. In fact, we'll just get rid of like this part here, so then we don't get like messed up with the 3 simultaneous linear equation number 2. Yeah, these are our two new simultaneous linear equations. What we do now is we bring the 120x over to this side and this 80x over to this side. So that will mean 50y equals blah, blah, blah. And on this equation, 50y equals blah, blah, blah. And in this case, this will mean 50y equals 16,000 minus 120x. So this is our second linear equation. Our first equation up here is 50y equals 12,000 minus 80x, like that. So now what we do is 16,000 minus 120x equals 12,000, minus 80x. We bring this to the other side, so that becomes 4,000, and bring this over to the other side, so that equals 40x. And we simplify this, so x equals 100. Yeah, so that's how we solve for x. So now we have the total number of units of keyboard sold, which in this case is going to be 100. Now what we need to do is substitute this x equals 100 into one of these equations here. So we're just going to take this first one here, x equals 100. That would mean 80 times 100 plus 50y over here. We can't forget about that. So plus 50y equals 12,000 bucks. So this will mean 8,000 plus 50y equals 12,000. 50y equals 4,000, and y equals, what's that? That's 800? No, that's 80. Yeah. 400 divided by 5 is 80. Yep, there we go. And that's our answer. That is actually not our answer. Well, x equals 100 and y equals 80. That is like working towards the answer, but that's not actually the answer. When we read the question, it says the shop receives $8,000 after selling 3/4 of the total number of keyboards and half the total number of the mice. How many of each were sold? And we didn't realize that, we didn't really factor in that last part. So what we need to do now is times 100 by 3/4. So x would therefore be 75. And half the amount of mice, so half times 80, that would equal 40. So therefore, 75 keyboards were sold and 40 mice were sold, and that would be our answer. Because the question is asking how many of each were sold, that means we need to factor in that last part of information in the question there. So 100 total keyboards sold and 80 total mice sold. Pretty simple. That's it. That's literally it. That's well, it's kind of like a modified version of the elimination method, but it still works. This is how you solve simultaneous linear equations. So chapter 1D, pretty straightforward. Identify what information the question gives you, and then assign, in this case, we assign x and y because there's two unknown things we need to find. And then, yeah, the rest is literally just chapter 1C. So yeah, this is how you do chapter 1D, constructing simultaneous linear equations. It's pretty much, well, you just identify what information the question gives you, and then use that information to create your simultaneous linear equations. And then the rest is pretty much just chapter 1C, where you're just solving them. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So chapter 1D should be pretty straightforward. Yeah, if you've got any questions or I've done something wrong, I may have done something wrong here, let me know in the comments. Yeah, make sure to give this video a like if you found it helpful, and make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.